All right. So in this video, I would like to talk to you about externalities. Now, what is an externality? Externality is something that affects the well-being of a bystander. Mostly when we speak of externalities, we mean negative externalities. It normally would affect a bystander in a negative way, but it doesn't have to be the case. There could be positive externalities. The cartoon that I either have shown or will show in class, depending on the timing of this video release, had an example from classical Simpsons when Homer Simpson didn't wear pants in his backyard, and that has affected the value of neighbor's property negatively. In that particular case, that is not that big a deal. The solution being, well, you offer Homer some money to wear pants, and that should solve the problem 9 times out of 10. In reality, though, sometimes the presence of an externality results in what we call a market failure. Now, what is a market failure? Market failure is one of those few cases when the forces of supply and demand actually do not result in an efficient outcome. Throughout this course, I have been saying and will be saying that 99 times out of 100, when we try to mess with the free market, we make things worse, not better. The case of externalities is one of the very few cases when the government's, well, not the government's, the authorities, the government rather, intervention into the markets is actually warranted. So, how do we analyze an externality? So, let's say we have a chemical plant that opens up next door. A polluting, smelly, stinking chemical plant that pollutes a lot. And let's say that we all live in the same neighborhood, and that chemical plant opening will decrease the value of each of our properties by $200,000. Again, I am not even talking about climate change. I am not even talking about more abstract costs of pollution. I'm speaking about very specific, very measurable cost. And that is the decrease of the value of your property. Does a chemical plant care about that? Of course not. Of course they don't care. They set their production decision based on supply and demand. So again, we have quantity price. They have demand for their paint or whatever other chemicals they produce. And they have their supply. Now, again, remember, what does supply represent? Supply represents the cost, effectively the marginal cost of this chemical plant. Again, what does this chemical plant consider? It considers the cost of their land, labor, energy, materials, whatever other costs it incurs. Does it consider the value, the decrease in value of your property? Of course not. Of course, they don't care. So, this is the private cost of, so let me write it down. So this is the private cost. This is the cost that the chemical plant actually cares about. Now, the problem is that pollution also incurs what we call a social cost. And again, in the example that I am giving, this is a very specific, very measurable cost, and that is the decrease in the value of your property. So this pinkish line represents both private and social cost. Again, remember, the chemical plant only cares about this one. We as a society care about this one. So, in an unregulated market, this much will be produced. This will be the quantity of paint or fertilizer or, I don't know, whatever it is that this plant produces, will be this much. The socially optimal quantity will be different. Socially optimal quantity will be right here. This is the true cost to society. This is our socially optimal quantity. Okay. So in the presence of a negative externality, if left unchecked, too much will be produced. This chemical plant will produce too much more than socially optimal. Now, what is the solution to this externality problem? The solution is actually surprisingly simple. It is an externality, it's external to this firm. We internalize it. They do not care about the pollution. We make them care. How do we make them care about the quantity of pollution? Well, taxes, right? Tax them for every cubic meter of carbon monoxide or whatever else they get into the air. And that's it. So the solution is simple. You simply move this white line up. You make this private cost equal to the social cost. They do not care about the loss of value of your home. Make them care. How do you make them care? Simple. Now, tax is not the only solution. There could be quotas. We could simply limit the quantity of pollutants, but these are all basically different means to the same end. What's important here is this is one of the few cases when a free market does not actually lead to a socially optimal outcome. Socially optimal outcome is this. Without taxes, okay, we'll be here. And look, there is a reason why all the polluting industries are in the third world countries these days. I mean, opening up something like this in New Zealand will be cost prohibitive, basically. Now, I mentioned that an externality does not need to be negative. And one of the best examples of a positive externality is education. Why did you decide to enroll in an executive MBA program at Massey? Well, you presumably weighed your benefits against your costs, right? And in terms of your benefits, why did you do this? Is your goal to make the world a better place, or is your goal to increase your earning power, your earning potential to progress up the career ladder? Well, I mean, it could be both, but I would bet you a little bit of money that your primary consideration is your private benefit. It's a benefit to you, to your personal development, to your career. So again, the quantity of education is determined by downward sloping demand. That again is your private benefit, and upward sloping supply. So supply is your cost, both explicit cost, the cost of the fees that you have to pay, and your opportunity cost, obviously. Instead of enrolling in MBA, you could have worked more, you could have enrolled in a Master of Analytics or whatever other degree is out there. But the benefit of your education is not just constrained to you. Society also benefits from your education. And again, I am not talking just about some abstract making this world a better place. There is a very specific benefit to your education. With your degree, chances are you are going to earn more. If you earn more, guess what? You will pay more taxes. That's it. So society benefits simply because of a greater tax take from your higher salaries. So if this market was left unchecked, this is the quantity of education that would have been achieved in our society. But the societal, the social benefit of education is up here. I'm a little bit constrained by space, but hopefully you can see this okay. So again, you, when deciding how much education to get, balance your private benefit against your private cost. Whereas societal benefit actually exceeds the private benefit. So if the solution here was the tax, what would be the solution here? Well, it's the opposite of the tax, which is a subsidy. And in the context of education, that would be scholarship, right? Massey Executive MBA has some scholarships. Massey University in general has some doctoral, had some postgrad and undergraduate scholarships. Every country in this world subsidizes education one way or the other, because again, of this reason. So again, here we have a subsidy, which is again is basically the opposite of the tax. So the socially optimal quantity of education is here. So let's compare these two graphs. On well, if I stand like this, on my right-hand side we have a negative externality, and on my left we have a positive externality. So let's compare the outcomes that would have been achieved in a free market without any sort of intervention versus socially optimal ones. Look at the negative externality. In case of a negative externality, we would be producing more than is socially optimal. Okay. One of your homework assignments will be on, one of the questions in your group assignment will be on externality. Tobacco, drugs, alcohol, sugary drinks, freshwater pollution, you name it. I mean, all of these are examples of negative externalities that affect societies in some negative way. And again, if left unchecked, we would have too much of those stuff in our economy. So again, solution, to move everything to the right. And again, the simplest way of doing that is tax. In case of a positive externality, we would be producing too little. We need to move our outcome to the left. How do we do that? Well, again, plenty of different ways of doing that, but the most direct one will be a subsidy. Again, in case of education, that would be scholarship. We will be discussing externalities more in class. Thank you for watching.